In my last Pantheon video, most of everybody wanted to discuss combat in Pantheon. Here's what many had to say. Cameron Woody says, with the extreme lack of PvP, it looks so boring. Looks more like the savior of role players. Rage Win says, the combat needs to improve from this because this looks awful. Mr. Miyagi says, this looks good from the world, etc. and has a lot of atmosphere. But the combat, it's boring. Look at the rogue in this video, staying behind the enemy and always the same animation. Looks like the character Convulsionary. I mean, I didn't need an action combat or so, but the fight system didn't look exciting. No AoE attacks, you must evade, system behind the fights, it's a lot of times the same. The game, it's only for a small player base, so no savior. Alright, I wanted to address this one. Sure, since we haven't played it yet, the combat might look a little slower than what we've come to expect these days, but number one, it's still in pre-alpha, early development. Number two, until we try it out ourselves, we really don't know what mechanics are happening. Number three, the player showed during that video playing was a complete noob of the game, no offense to him, but they just logged him in to try it out. Number four, Pantheon having a small player base is exactly what they're expecting and shooting for. I mean, that is kind of the beauty of the project. They're not trying to pull every World of Warcraft player or become the fabled WoW killer. They're coming for players like me, players who want to engage with the community and the game world and work together to unfold its glory. They're actually expecting around 5,000 to 10,000 active subscribers. With the 1 server, 2 server option or so, that's about what you're used to in an MMO. Meaning that most MMOs have 100 servers. And, that's really all an MMO really needs to feel good and full. Alright, now I want to talk a little bit about some comments that were left on my last video about in the defense of the combat. Paul Kariako says, those complaining about the combat, chess is boring as hell to watch, and yet it's still one of the most strategic and involved games you can play in the world. We don't want checkers in Pantheon. That's what the other MMOs are for. William Orvison says, it's still in pre-alpha, so it's still early, or it's still too early to make any sort of judgment on the game. Sujin says, playing combat and watching combat are two very different things. Paul Kariako says, EverQuest combat was not the most involved, but it was more about understanding the world. As a monk, I hated fighting magical creatures or those with poisons. They wrecked me. But up against melee creatures, I stood my ground. It's not about perfect rotation, it's more about actually understanding the world. As stated, the combat shown is not fleshed out yet. Pantheon is still in pre-alpha and systems are all being tweaked, tested, retweaked, and pounded into the vision the Visionary Realms is going for. But it's worth stating that the combat will not be super fast and twitchy. The combat will resemble old classic MMORPGs with possibly a bit more speed. Remember that Pantheon's evolving MMOs from the point they were back in classic times, so I would expect it to be a little faster than, say, the EverQuest 1 system. Combat is more about strategic moves being in place at the right time on the right mob. In my opinion, tab targeting is the way to go for an MMORPG. Of course, I am the one who also enjoys old active time battle systems of Final Fantasy 6 or 7, or any or definitely that over any system in a newer single-player RPGs. There's a certain deal of satisfaction from reading into what is coming and using the right preventative attack or defense to prepare for, or knowing when to go all-out damage to finish off a boss or mob, then backing up to a more defensive strategy or even a group-focused buff to get their damage up or heal up endurance, mana, etc. I can guarantee that since Pantheon is a group-centric MMO, everything about the abilities will coincide and relate with the rest of your party, meaning many classes will have to adjust their rotations depending on what state the party is currently in. This causes more communication with the party. Throw me a strength buff or need mana, etc. as one rotation pulls up. Say damage, another one that was running might make the mana drop. I could see things like paladins choosing between sacrificing their own endurance to increase the party's mana pools, for example, but needing endurance to hold the aggro, that kind of strategy. This type of combat is engaging, and it doesn't have to go at lightning fast Twitch levels to keep you entertained and engaged. If the combat is engaging, it's a win. All the nerds across the world will feel our heartbeats picking up during those big pulls, sweating that we might have just caused the death to the entire party. This is straight from Pantheon's official site. At Visionary Realms, we believe that the best of MMORPG design is yet to come. We understand how healthy challenge in a game promotes teamwork, often blooming into profound relationships and enduring memories. We focus on these elements of design and aim to provide our players with environments conducive to building reputations, friendships, and alliances, as well as rivalries and notoriety. Visionary Realms resumes where past MMORPGs left off with these elements and is excited to see the genre re-emerge. Challenge, depth, impact. That's what I'm looking for, and I hope you are too. So let's talk. I'd like to do my next video on the classes of Pantheon. What are you planning on playing and why? What are you looking forward to on your class of choice so far? Do you have any idea how you think that class is going to end up playing at Pantheon's launch? Any expectations? Leave your comments below and we will discuss them in my next video in a few days. Thanks for tuning in. If you're interested in more Pantheon videos, news, updates, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you then. Check out my other Pantheon video if you haven't yet. I'll leave the link to click right here for you. And once again, thank you all for your support, comments, and discussions. Let's build our community together now so we can all group up and tackle Pantheon together during beta and launch.